Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Red Homestead. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today, oh boy, we have a spicy one today. Nebraska, of course, dropped a pretty tough loss to Michigan State on the road in East Lansing, 20-17. So today, we're breaking it down, biggest takeaways, grades, and everything else, and what we can basically take into these final three games. Nebraska has 3 more chances to make a bowl game here, and also, assuming Minnesota loses to Ohio State, they still control their own destiny in the Big Ten West, which is outrageous.
Nothing changed.
So we have a lot to talk about today. So Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing. It was a disappointing loss for us.
Yeah.
I figured it'd be a close game just because, again, Michigan had so many things going for it. Senior day, they wanted to get a conference win. There was a lot to play for, but we weren't the aggressor. In the last weeks, I thought that Nebraska had played with a great edge, that they had set the tone and physicality. And I felt like Michigan State was very willing to match that. And I think it was a frustrating day for the defense.
Right. I was going to say, I mean, obviously we can just hop right into it, but like they had all the cards. They were pulling out all the cards. And so, oh man, I mean, there was a lot that we had talked about in the predictions video that I thought came to fruition in this game. But ironically, a lot of the worries that I had at least going into the Purdue game, like I predicted us to lose to Purdue because I thought this offensive line could be horrendous with the new starters and have some issues. And that I thought Purdue might be able to easily find the problems there. But it didn't really come to fruition because in the Purdue game, we had the lead early. We were able to run the ball, and your big brain, if we don't pass, they can't pass rush situation was literally
true.
But this week, Michigan State found enough success early that forced us to pass. So Haarberg ended up having to drop back a lot in this game, had 37 dropbacks, and he paid the price, to say the least. And this is something we'll probably mention multiple times in this game, but he was pressured on 57% of dropbacks, which was an outrageous amount. And
57. That's not, you can't understate that enough. 57. No. 57.
Insane.
57.
So, obviously, that's going to come into play. I mean, Haarberg played a horrible game. And so let's start there on the offensive side here. Talk about Heinrich Haarberg, the lead in this. I mean, we're seeing people in Husker Nation calling for Purdy, calling for Sims. What are your thoughts on Heinrich Haarberg, and how much blame do you put on him in this game?
I mean, I think the same amount that we had for the last 3 games that we won. He had similar mistakes.
Like the Illinois game, right?
I mean, we turned the ball over just as much. I think there was a couple worse throws. The pick that got called back in the end zone that we almost didn't get to kick a field goal to end half.
Oh, man.
I think that was the worst throw I've seen Heinrich Haarberg throw. That was unexcusable. You can't just lose a safety like that. And threw it straight to him in the end zone. That was bad. The one that kind of overthrew Fedoni. It wasn't great, but
that one's an acceptable miss.
That's a mistake that happens.
The one downfield
at the end of the game stinks.
The one downfield missing a wide open receiver downfield though, and throwing it to the middle of the field.
Those
horrible.
Two.
Horrible.
Yes.
You know, and so
those 2 picks are about as bad of throws as we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, he threw again 2 picks, but really 3, considering we got bailed out on the one in the end zone. And then the fumble, tough. Obviously, the end of the game as well. He got stripped on the last play, whatever. So those are tough.
Trying to keep the game alive.
So I mean, 4 turnovers is not what you want to see. It was very reminiscent of the Jeff Sims Minnesota game in a lot of ways. A game on the road in the Big Ten against a team that was beatable, that you easily could beat, and then you lose the turnover battle 3-0 and lose the game basically because of the turnovers in a lot of ways. And we knew Michigan State was going to be able to convert on the kicks. In the predictions video, I was like, what's the narrative? It's like, we got to turn the ball over multiple times, probably lose the turnover battle 3 or 4-0. And then basically the only other narratives was the intangible narratives. It was, like you said, the senior day, last home game for Michigan State because they're playing Penn State in Ford Field. All of these narratives are the reasons why you're going to see a good Michigan State. It was good scheming for Michigan State. You got to say, they built a really nice game plan.
Oh, they did.
And on both sides of the ball. And we'll talk about that on the defensive side here soon, because that was immaculate.
There was nowhere for Heinrich Haarberg to go. Like, we can't allow these route trees to be super long if we're getting cooked. Versus Michigan State was fully prepared for that, and their wide receivers were able to win those intermediate battles and make good throws. But no, I think you're right. We got home some, but we didn't cover well enough, and they schemed. They were ready for the blitz, where I don't think Nebraska was ready for the blitzes to come.
The game plan from Satterfield was a little bit disappointing. The first half was pretty good, and we had some success on the ground early. And it was really the left side of the line of scrimmage where we saw the success on the ground. It seemed like Evans, Jenkins, and Prohaska were making things happen, at least in the ground game. We saw the Emmett Johnson big run. We saw the Anthony Grant big run. We even saw the Josh Fleeks run towards the edges as well, all to the left. The right side of the line of scrimmage just seemed to have nothing going for it the entire game, and our perimeter blocking in this game was definitely subpar. And we saw Fedoni miss a few blocks on the edges. We saw a few of the pulls not convert. Alex Bullock had some issues on his
We did a bad job
picks.
getting to the safeties in the game.
We
We didn't do a good job.
Second level. Yeah. But
I think in the
obviously
second
Michigan
half-
State was selling out, and so that was the thing. So Michigan State's game plan I thought was just absolutely beautiful the whole way around with how, and that's my biggest worry here for the offensive side is moving forward as a takeaway. I think we might be in trouble considering MSU, I think, revealed the formula that Maryland and Wisconsin and Iowa can use here. And I don't know if we have a real answer for it because of the personnel that we have at this point. I mean, getting Billy Kemp back will help, but this is one thing that we talked about in the prediction video. If Michigan State's defense had one positive was how well they disguised blitzes. And
on their D-line,
their only strength statistically was stuffing the run, stuffing the interior run.
And it was impressive. I think a lot of times they were very willing to double team Ben Scott and really create a lot of havoc in the middle of the offensive line. And I don't think we made really good adjustments for it.
Haarberg was never
a lot of times. Once we started getting those runs off, and again, the Ben Scott, Justin Evans, Jenkins, Teddy Prohaska was a pretty good side of the line to run to. And then you get Fedoni out there, and Malachi Coleman had a good game blocking on that left side, that was kind of the run scheme.
But Nora and Benhart, though, oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, Benhart got cooked. He didn't look healthy, so he shouldn't have been out there.
He played his worst game of his career, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think it's just because he wasn't able to go. I think the coaches got to see that, and I mean, you got to put somebody else like Latowski. Yeah, because I mean, he's a competitor, and shout out for him to try and go. And I'm not going to blame a guy for trying to compete and be there, but I think the coaches have to recognize he's getting beat. He can say he's healthy, but I don't think he was healthy enough. That I think you got to recognize that we're getting
he played
beat.
Horrible.
It was. And he's been one of our best offensive linemen. So I think that you as a coach gotta recognize that, okay, he's not fully healthy. We gotta ease him back into this because he was not fully ready. But they really started blitzing up the middle. They started blowing up that left side. They started double teaming Ben Scott, and because Ben Scott was getting a lot of push in that first quarter. And then they honed into that middle of the field, and they were willing to do a lot of creative stuff. And it just wasn't working for us anymore. And you had to find ways to beat that. And I just don't think that we were able to recognize and do that.
At some points, we did start trying to get the ball towards the edges a little bit more. But, dude, they just kept getting blown up. I mean, in the drives in the first half, I mean, Haarberg also made some mistakes as well. Even when we had some opportunities, like I think like the second or third drive, the third drive, he missed Anthony Grant on the wheel route. The ball was late and it went off Grant's hands. And when he got hit, and like if that ball's out earlier, Grant maybe gets 15 or 20 yards, and like maybe, who knows, maybe it makes the guy miss, and you never know. Constantly the timing was off, and I think that probably stems from the offensive line play. This is the worry though, is that again, Michigan State, they drew up the game plan. They disguised the blitzes. They played man on the outside, forced these young receivers to try to beat them, and I mean they basically couldn't. And then they brought the safeties up and just begged Haarberg to throw the ball downfield.
They were happy with cover 1 and cover 0. They love bringing him down. And it was great. It stopped us in a lot of ways.
And dude,
we couldn't hit it. We couldn't hit the deep shots that made them pay.
Yeah, this is a strategy that we talked about for years to play against some of these trash Big Ten West quarterbacks. We always begged Shenander to do it. He never did it. And
now we do it. And now we're getting...
Oh my gosh, it works so well. I just don't know if we have a formula. Obviously, the question is, does Maryland have the personnel that MSU does? And I just don't think MSU's personnel is that spectacular by any means. So this is what I'm worried about, is that looking forward, is that I think Maryland, Wisconsin, and obviously Iowa have the personnel to do exactly this. And I just don't know if we have the answers for it. So that's why I get really nervous moving forward. But I mean, like, do you think that Haarberg should start in the future? Like, what's the actual discussion here? Like, what's the pros and cons?
I think, yes, we should continue to start Haarberg.
Okay.
He's been our guy at this point. He is 5-2 as a starter. It stinks that we played a bad game on the road. I don't think like we set him up for success this week. The offensive line got cooked this week. He still made bad throws. 2 really bad throws that you can't make.
Interested to see Purdy, though? I mean, the argument would be is that if Haarberg took the steps forward, we haven't seen Purdy. It's possible that Purdy took the steps forward just like Haarberg did since the spring game. I mean, that would be the narrative. Obviously, we've seen Jeff Sims at this point.
You can open up the competition again. If the coaches want to make that decision and feel that they got something, I mean, go ahead. But I'm fine continuing to roll it out into this next week. Obviously, if he's playing really bad, if he has a couple of those really bad throws like he did here in this last game at Michigan State, like missing a touchdown or, one towards the end zone and missing a safety
away,
yeah, then yes, I'm fine with it. I still think that he deserves to start this next week.
I mean, I guess your argument would be is that these were basically the same mistakes we saw in the past, but we were winning, so it was fine then. Why is it not fine now? My argument then would be is, well, it should not be fine then, and it's definitely not fine now.
It was never fine.
The problem is that when it happens over and over and over again,
Sims again, because he got in the last game and fumbled the snap
for a touchdown.
And that's the only thing. That's what you can't do. And so we've seen that enough from Sims where I'm like, okay, I'm fine of not seeing him because we can't afford that mistake. And he's been willing to do that in every single game he's played in, which is three separate times. And so I don't need to see Sims again. But Purdy, fine. If he makes another mistake, fine.
Obviously, I would argue that just because we haven't seen Purdy yet, it's not the worst thing ever. But obviously, at the same time, the odds are that Purdy is not any better than Heinrich Haarberg and probably worse at this point, considering he hasn't been playing. So I get it. I'm probably on your side too. At this point, we have to just suck it up and play with Haarberg and then look to the portal in the off season. But man, it's ugly. And when the mistakes keep happening, when you're making brain dead throws like the few that he made in this game, it's worrying.
I still think there's hope and upside for him, to be honest.
Well, some of the zingers when he had time to throw were beautiful. Across the middle, to Fedoni, to Alex Bullock. There were some nice ones. And he made like is this RG3 type of play with his legs? Like, holy crap. Like, there is some upside there. And then he ripped off the 50-yard run. So it's like, okay.
To get us back into the game.
It's just painful. At some point, it comes down to personnel. Like, if you put a Marvin Harrison Jr. on Nebraska, he's going to get open. And it's going to make it a little bit easier. And you're not going to be able to stack the box in the same way. So in the passing game, the personnel is also a problem right now where obviously Michigan State gave zero respect to any of our receiving options and just forced them to beat us, and no one could. And that's really the difference.
Yeah, and then they got away with a lot of holds too. I mean, I think we beat them on some.
Yeah, they played physical though. Like they said, let's play physical. If we get penalties, we get penalties.
Yeah, these are young wide receivers. Let's make it tough on them. Let's make it physical. Yep. And that's a great point. It's a great idea.
So I mean, they schemed the game perfectly, and for a team with a coach that is a first-time head coach, an interim head coach, is impressive.
I mean, he's got D'Antoni on the sideline.
That's fair. They got plenty of experience out there. Okay, let's officially transition to the defensive side here and talk about some of these things. I mean, again, the defense didn't play a horrible game by any means. It just wasn't to the standard of the last few weeks. And again, like in the Purdue game, I literally said, I don't think Purdue can score more than 20. This defense is not going to allow more than 20, even if we give up a few turnovers. Literally, that's what happened in this game. When we gave up 3 turnovers, the defense still only gave up 20, even with 3 turnovers. The offense had a chance to come back and win this game.
And let's be honest, a garbage touchdown call that absolutely was not a touchdown.
Goodness.
Probably is a field goal. I mean,
right. It sucks when
that changes the complexion of the game.
That's true. It is a miracle we went 15 minutes or whatever without mentioning the refs, because there was horrible.
You never want to blame the refs because you never want to blame the refs, but they did have a particularly bad game throughout than we've had this season, and the touchdown.
Well, I'm okay with missing like a PI call, like the one that was obviously a PI, but they didn't call it. I mean, come on. And then the next play,
gets tackled.
Yeah, and the next play we throw a pick. But I'm not salty. But what bothers me if it's a touchdown and you have a clear review and you don't
his hand that's on the side of the ball, you literally see it come off.
Yeah,
it comes
the
off.
Ball like legit.
You see the ball bounce.
Yeah, it's horrible. Obviously, we don't want to
You see
rant.
both of his
Everyone probably
hands.
already knows this. I mean, everyone saw the game, but it's tough out there to say the least. So on the defensive side, it was unfortunate because Princeville got ruled out right before the game. And so that was
Big loss.
It ended up feeling like a huge loss. I mean, he at this point on the season, he is our highest graded player on PFF. And when you watch the game, I mean, he's continually gotten better every single week. Last week was his best game of his career, which
He's good in coverage and zone. And man,
so a lot there was like,
blitzing.
man, it sucks that we didn't have Princeville, and you could really feel it overall. But obviously, you don't want to blame not having one true freshman D lineman for why we didn't play to our standard. The secondary obviously was the big problem here. Like we said, usually we should be able to rely on them to win their battles in man. And on the season, we've actually been pretty good in man, but we weren't winning them in this game. And that was a real surprise. I mean, again, watching MSU's film, they were missing out on their second best wide receiver and their starting tight end weren't playing in this game. So the matchups just made so much sense for us to absolutely dominate. But MSU drew up the game really well. Caden Hauser was just asked not to do too much, make quick throws, get the ball out quick. Don't make any type of play that could be a turnover. And he had 0 turnover worthy plays in this game. And that's how you beat Nebraska. Just wait for the zones to break. And if you have decent protection, you're going to have opportunities. But I didn't think we were going to see a Caden Hauser that was this dialed in, that threw the ball this well. I mean, it was his highest graded game since week 3. And if you go back and watch the film of the Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan, and Minnesota games, I mean, he was horrible in those games. Couldn't hit passes, missed guys wide open, was horrible under pressure. And he dealt with everything Nebraska threw at him with tons of composure and looked really good in this game. What's up with that?
We didn't get enough pressure. I mean, we throw tons of blitz packages at these guys. We have been willing all year to 0 blitz. And that is great if you can get to the quarterback. But we gave him a lot of time in the pocket, way more than we ever gave Heinrich Haarberg. And again, I felt like they beat us in man in the middle of the field. Our linebackers didn't cover well enough. Our linebackers didn't cover well enough. Again, if you make that choice to do that, it puts a lot of pressure on our secondary. And I don't think our secondary played well enough to step up enough. I think some players individually, I thought Hartzog had a good game. But again, Tommy Hill had bad moments.
Yeah.
You know, Quentin Newsome had bad moments. Marcus Buford had bad moments. Again, just things that you can't give up. Where we gave up long plays because our guys couldn't get home. The defensive line did not get home enough on this game, especially when our quarterback is getting blitzed the whole game.
Well, I was going to say, I think the bigger problem is not that we didn't get home, because we ended up getting to him a handful of times. It was just more the coverage. And it was good scheming for Michigan State. You got to say, they built a really nice game plan.
Oh, they did. And I just can't believe that Nebraska wasn't doing the same thing. Like, pick them apart. They were giving us man coverage, run good routes, run curls, like get these good timing routes.
Yeah, this is a game where you feel like missing Billy Kemp really was a problem.
That we were trying to beat them over the linebackers under the safeties. And that's really tough for our quarterback to make those throws. Yes, that is one way that you can beat them in that coverage, but that's a lot to put on our QB.
We blitzed on 62.5% of the plays of his dropbacks and only got pressure on 37%. So that's just not the ratio
that's what it felt like,
to succeed. And we just weren't getting home, even though we were sending it. So we were trying to have the same game plan, but the blitzes weren't working. So at some point that comes down to personnel. At some point that comes down to a little bit of scheming, comes down to personal execution. We just weren't winning the battles when we needed to. Now on both sides of the ball up front. And when you give Caden Hauser enough time to make just some simple throws and get the ball out in fast enough time, he was accurate and made it easy for him. It made him look really easy.
Yeah, it's 1v1s.
What did you think about the defensive scheme overall? Like, what did you think went wrong as a whole? Obviously, the zone coverage from the linebackers is probably the weak point of our defense, but we've always known this. It's not like, it's some big surprise suddenly that Heinrich and John Bullock aren't great in zone.
Yeah, Bullock got destroyed.
He
got cooked. He had a really bad game. He had probably one of the worst performances of any defensive player this whole season. That's tough. We had nobody that really played an elite game. Usually we've had one player this game, whether it be Nick Heinrich for a game or Isaac Gifford or Javen Wright. Somebody in the secondary plays an absolute lockdown game and makes the big plays that make the difference in the game. You know, we didn't get as many tackles for loss as Michigan State did. Our defense didn't get as many sacks as Michigan State did. And that's what a lot of it's what it comes down to. I mean, we have two, not great offenses, and you have to win those battles. We know that it's a defensive team to win. And I know they were put in bad situations, but we've seen them come out of bad situations and we didn't force any turnovers. We didn't take the ball away once. And usually, with a block punt or a block kick or, getting 3 and outs quickly, not allowing them to move the ball, get first downs, that helps our offense put in positions to win. And our defense just we gave up too much. We didn't get a turnover. That's what helps us. That gets our offense fired up. It makes it easy for our offense. And we weren't able to do that this game.
But when we're not converting the pressures is what matters. And the receivers were finding enough success.
They ran great routes. They ran great routes for man. Michigan State did a really good job when he had pressured to get the ball out quick somewhere. They had short intermediate routes that they won in man coverage. It felt simple, where for us in the past game, it felt complex and difficult. And I think that was bad scheming somewhat on Satterfield's part. We got to make it easy for essentially a first-year starter, and our offensive line has to make it easier for him to be successful. He can't be blitzed and get pressured 57% of his dropbacks. That is just too much. We had some good games before, but again, once we get behind and we have to pass it 37 times, A, that's not a good spot for him anyway. B, we didn't hit our shots and we turned the ball over. It just made it too easy for them to stack the box. We couldn't make them pay. I just don't feel like it was the best game plan. Rule talks about meeting the standard, and I don't feel like our scheme met the standard. Our defense didn't meet their standard of what they can play, and the offense didn't meet their standard week.
No.
Especially against a 2-6 team, which is just disappointing when you had 3 in a row and you can stack it to 4. And this is probably, of the 4 games we played, this is the easiest team. Again, they're solid. It's a solid team. Every Big Ten team's a solid team.
This is why I had an eerie feeling about this game the whole entire week, because it just seemed too easy. It was like, and like yesterday morning before the game, I was like, I gotta go find some other reasons for why Nebraska's not going to win this game. And I went and looked across all MSU journalist articles I could find. All 7 of them picked Nebraska to win. I mean, almost all of them picked us to cover the spread. It was just like, no one is seeing this as a threatening game, but yet the line hasn't really moved. And so for me, that was kind of a signal that, okay, smart money here. There is an X factor here. And obviously the X factor was our youth and our offensive line. Moving forward, is there any other X factors here or things that get you excited or scared or nervous going into these last 3 games of the year?
I mean, the positives are, Emmett Johnson continues to look really good.
Yeah, Billy Kemp will be back. Newly will be back healthy here soon.
Buford didn't play. Buford played a solid game for his first game back. I think that he has room to grow as he continues to get better. That's exciting. I mean, I think Coleman, I continue to be impressed. He had a 91 run block, which is exciting for a freshman to take that on and do well there.
And again, there were opportunities there. Like there were moments where they had him beat and they just grabbed him and tackled him. And that was obviously MSU's strategy was we're going to play man to man.
I feel like the last couple weeks,
beat,
Coleman's
just
won.
tackle him. And
I feel like Coleman's done that a couple weeks in a row. And this other thing is Haarberg on the one. It was a heads up play where we did get held really bad and he throws it that way to make sure that they get the penalty. Like there was some good things from them, but our O-line, we can't get beat that bad, especially against a team that literally hadn't been good at sacks all year. Our defense had trouble on the script again. We have to do better recognizing what they're going to do on the script. We got to know our own weaknesses better to handle that and throw some wrenches in those first drives, because the last 2 teams being able to like really drive the field on us and that being their best drive. I know they've schemed it and stuff all week, but that's a great area our defense can improve. And again, the other worry for me is when the offense gets stuck, we have been destroyed on the field position battle game this whole season, just where our offense starts versus where the opposing offense
this game
starts.
Was probably not even close. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it had to have been pretty significant.
This one, it felt worse than usual. Again, especially when you're behind, then it really gets magnified how bad it is. Again, when you need points and you're getting stuffed, and the punt, Billy Kemp going out there just to fair catch the punts and a couple miscues on that.
Fair caught in the 5-yard line.
Bleak Road, again, his punts were kind of missiles. They weren't hanging up in the air. That gave them opportunities to run. We definitely lost that phase of the football game, but Billy Kemp not being able to return anything because he's still kind of hurt. I see why we did it. I'd way rather just make sure we get the ball, but also like him, I'd rather see.
Yeah, I mean, Rule said that they thought they had a pretty good matchup to get a blocked punt in this game, so that's why they were fine with Billy Kemp going back there just to fair catch it if they thought they could get a blocked punt.
We got close a couple times.
Yeah, so that's tough. And obviously, to wrap up the video, we got to shout out Bo the Val from the Discord, who had he was the only one to pick MSU out of everyone in the predictions, which is also telling. He predicted MSU to win 20-13, so a really good prediction here from Bo.
4 points away.
Shout out Bo. Obviously, he's got the crystal ball out there in the cave somewhere, really doing work. So listen to this man. Join the Discord if you haven't already, because you can get in on these predictions, get the juicy shout out each week. Obviously, lots of things to plug here. The Patreon as well. We've been posting some bangers on Patreon with the film breakdowns and everything else. So join us there. Been having great to see people joining on the Patreon. And of course, the HOMESTEAD Store. We've gotten some great feedback.
Sir.
It's fire. What else is there to say? Come on. Well, if you're not wearing HOMESTEAD, what are you doing?
Guys.
But blaze the trails with HOMESTEAD. So we appreciate you guys for watching, hanging out with us, and we'll be back very soon with the predictions video for Maryland, which is going to be a juicy one, to say the least. But as always, guys,
big
I'm
game.
Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Big Red Homestead, and guys, we'll see you next time.
Go Big Red,
baby.